so just to avoid the noise. Okay, welcome back. 2 weeks or 3 weeks since our last meeting, I sent out a note yesterday that we'll be covering a new topic on life coaching. I sent you the link as well, and just wanted to know if everybody got the link. If you want to speak, please go ahead and unmute yourself and talk. Did you all receive the link? Hello?
Yeah, I didn't receive it.
Oh, okay. I sent it by email.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll check the email later on.
You can check it later. It was not when I sent it. Okay. So we are going to with the life coaching, and I'm not going to spend a great deal of time talking about the nature of life coaching, but I want you to first become familiar with the material that I sent the link to. It's on the website, wdainstitute.com. And then hopefully either next week or in the new year, I think, we will go into looking at some of the specifics of life coaching. But today, what I want us to do is to look at the key component of the life coaching and the process, what it's involved. And we will be looking at an example of how that process could be worked out. So I want to begin with just maybe a give and take this morning. This afternoon here, which is evening at your end. I just want to ask you, what do you think about the term life coaching? When you hear life coach, what comes to mind for you? Please, you may unmute yourself and speak.
Can I come in?
Yes, please.
Yeah, if the term life itself means in your natural life, it's like a lifestyle. Yeah.
Okay. Life coaching it's a lifestyle. Okay, good. Any other ideas? Thank you. Any other ideas about life coach? Anybody else? Okay. I'm going to share a screen with you, and there are just a few highlights that I have here to share with you about what life coaching or a life coach consists of. We look at a life coach or life coaching as when a person who is able to provide guidance, someone with insight and some experience to be able to share and coach someone else in that. We also think of it even in terms of being able to invest your knowledge or experience in the lives of others. You would notice here the highlight that I've made, that it's about Christian leaders who are willing to invest their knowledge and experience and even their very life so that others might learn to think and feel and act like Jesus. A spiritual life coach is a person who, in the midst of a caring relationship, imparts truth that changes life, that is conduct or character of another person, and gradually helping the disciple to become more like Jesus. Many of us, I'm sure, growing up, we had mentors in our lives, spiritual mentors, who sort of took us under their wings and walked with us and mentored us along the way in the process of becoming more mature. We see this even in the scriptures with people like Paul and Timothy. We also even have an occasion with Silas, Paul and Silas as well. Are there any other biblical examples that comes to mind for you in terms of life coaching? Anybody?
I guess Elijah and Elisha.
Elijah and Elisha, yes, that's a good example. Yes. Any others?
Jesus and the 12, and especially the two.
Yes, Jesus and the 12 and the two. And who were the two?
Peter and John.
Peter and John. Good. Anything else? Either from the Old or the New Testament.
Paul and Silas.
Paul and Silas, yes. We can also think of Moses and Joshua, right, in the Old Testament. And there are several examples. Uh, the key here is maintaining a relationship with the person and helping the person to actually grow in their faith, to become mature. That is the concept. So I'm sure in your own life you've had examples of people that mentored you and helped you be where you are now. So for our purposes today, I'm going to share a PowerPoint and walk you through a specific example of how you could take someone, you being a life coach, discipler, taking a younger person or someone through the process of disciple making and helping that person through coaching process. So let's see what I have. If I can ask everybody to mute, you can mute your microphone, that will be very helpful. Thank you. So where do I start here? We are going to be looking. Okay. 19. All right. One second. This is okay. So the NGP as part, this is the key concept from this life coaching process. And the NGP stands for needs, growth, and projects. And the first thing I want us to maybe deliberate a bit on is about growth. The question is, does growth ever stop? You know, if you even think in terms of our own, human life, growth never stops. A person will continue growing. Even if we look also at the human life, our brains keep growing. There's something called neuroplasticity. Plasticity is the brain's ability to heal itself in the process of growth. So I guess to answer the same question, the question here, growth is something that never, ever stops. It's ongoing, it is progressive. But then we can also lay a foundation for a lifelong growth. Paul writes here in Colossians chapter 1, verse 28, he says he's the one we proclaim, admonishing, oops, did I put a timeline on this? Admonishing and teaching everyone with wisdom so that we may present everyone fully mature in Christ. This is the end goal as we progress through the concept of growth, that everyone will become mature in Christ. I believe this is the key calling of every one of us as ministers. It's like having a child and not seeing any specific growth in a child. The child isn't developing. The child experiences stunted growth to the extent that the child is now grown, maybe it's a young adult, but still maintains these childish qualities and attitudes. The next thing, oops, what's happening to my PowerPoint? Yes, is when it comes to, just a second. Okay, all right. When it comes to disciple building, we need to have a practical strategy. The strategy must be, first of all, balanced. It must also be biblical. Now, balanced in the sense that we do our part, and there's also a part that I believe God does. In other words, we sort of try to cooperate, with the Lord in what he wants to do. So we need to see balance. Now, it also has to be biblical. It has to be scriptural. There has to be a scriptural basis for that strategy. Number three is that it should be something that is simple and easy to pass on to the next generation. It also has to be adaptable, given the context and resources. It must also give a picture of a disciple's specific needs and goals at every point of their growth. So at every point in the growth process, a need must be addressed, and also specific goals need to be addressed as well. And it must also model reproduction. It should be reproducible. It should be something that can be reproduced by the next generation or the person that you are discipling. So we want to look at some specifics of these needs, goals, and projects, the NGP. This is the crux of the life coaching process, as I mentioned earlier on. When it comes to needs, the first thing we need to ask is, how can we discover the areas in which a disciple needs to grow? How can we discover that? That is the first thing we ask ourselves. In other words, are there areas in the life of the disciple that that particular disciple needs to grow in? How can that be discovered? In discovering those areas in terms of the disciples' needs, there are at least 4 key areas we need to think about. How does the disciple, for instance, needs to grow in terms of knowledge? What attitudes needs changing? Behaviors that needs changing, and also a specific set of skills or skill that needs to be learned. These are things we need to bear in mind. When it comes to the next one, which is needs, we also need to ask, okay, the needs should be very specific. Which need will be easier to address in terms of priority? So let's take, for example, we can say that, John needs to be a better person. Is that particular need specific enough, or you think it's more generic? In comparison to, say, John needs to grow in the area of financial accountability, that is more specific. So when we determine a need of a disciple, we need to make sure that that particular need is specific and not generic. And we need to prioritize the needs and choose maybe one or three, depending on what you think would work best for you. The next thing we need to look at are the goals. What would be different in the life of a disciple if, let's say, a specific need is met? What would be different? If a need is met in the life of a disciple or a goal is achieved, what would be different for that person? Just like we mentioned about needs, the goals also needs to be measured in both time and performance. We can borrow this idea of SMART goals from the field of education, that the goals must be specific, it must be measurable, achievable, realistic, and also time bound. The next thing is to think in terms of which goal is better. A goal could be that maybe the discipler could become a better father. And so then over the next 6 weeks, looking at a timeline here, we can say John will be able to say no to existing commitments so that he can spend maybe 1 hour with his kids each day and start having a date night with his wife, maybe once a week. It's just an example of a specific, achievable goal. I want to just take a moment and open the floor in case anybody has a question or thoughts that they want to share. Yes, anybody?
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Quickly help me to the when you started off, you said the NGP stands for needs, and the G is what?
Growth. Sorry, goals and projects. Needs, goals, and projects.
Needs, growth, and projects.
Goals and projects.
Goals or growth?
Goals.
Okay. I heard growth. Okay.
No. Yeah.
Needs, goals, and projects.
Yes.
Okay, that's okay. Then that clarifies for me because I was getting confused whether the goal was part of the need.
No, we've got the needs, we've got the goals, and then we've got projects. Yes.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome, sir. Any other questions or thoughts? Okay, well, let's move on then. Now we want to look at the development of projects. How do you develop projects? The project outlines the disciple's activity towards the disciple. The disciple's activity towards the disciple. And again, the good old R caps. We're going to use the RCAPS model to develop the project. So the first thing here is to look at relationships, to build friendship, to show concern, and to call the individual or the group regularly, and to do fun things together. This is something between the discipler and the disciple, building relationships based on the RCAPS model, building friendship, showing concern for the discipler, for the disciple, calling them regularly just to check on them, and to do fun things together. Next is content. You have to decide what you want to teach your disciple based on your analysis, or maybe based on the needs of the disciple. If maybe the disciple needs a little bit of emphasis in the area of prayer, or maybe some biblical doctrine, you have to decide how you're going to teach that and what you're going to teach. So this is more or less like a bit, it should be more collaborative rather than you deciding, oh, this is where or what I think my disciple needs. You also need to get a disciple to have input. They can have a buy-in into what he or she thinks that they need. Number 3 is accountability. In developing a project, you need to ask how the disciple is applying the truth. They got to be accountable to you. What are the challenges that they're facing in their effort to apply the truth, and what is working and what's not working? Prayer. What would you pray for your disciple? In what areas in their lives do you think they would need help in terms of prayer? There's a typo here you would see in that. What about situations? You ask yourself, okay, in developing a project, what environments or activities will help meet that stated need for the disciple? Okay. So we've looked at the needs, we've looked at the goals, we've also looked at the projects, how these can be developed. This is just a guideline. In the material, the manual online, there are copious notes, lots of information to guide you through the process. Okay, next, we have to do evaluation. You need to set a timeline. So if, let's say, you're working on this for a period of, say, 6 months or even 3 months, you need to be able to do a review to see how your disciple is progressing. Next, you should also, you need to ask yourself whether the disciple should continue the NGP or maybe move on to something new. That will be determined after you've done the evaluation. Any questions at this point?
Yeah, back to the accountability
Yes.
Portion. Yeah, I'll ask how they are applying the truth with the accountability. Well, even though you have access to see the manual for the full notes, just off the hop of the hook,
Yeah.
off the top of my head.
Yeah.
With the accountability also involves as you are building the relationship, to say that I mean the process of the accountability itself.
Yes.
What I'm saying, to set the ground rules as to how you are going to, what you are expecting them to be. Would that also involve accountability? Would that be accountability?
Yes, you need to lay down expectations. There has to be expectations.
Okay.
And the disciple also needs to have a buy-in. Let's say
Okay.
you may even have maybe some pastors working under you. Okay,
Mm,
you lay out your expectations. They also lay out the expectations, and you both share that.
mm,
And then the person has to make themselves accountable to you, which means that through the evaluation, if there are certain things that are not being done or ignored because of the extent of the relationship, you
mm,
can now have the authority to bring this to the person's attention. And if the person has a good relationship with you, they'll be
mm,
receptive to it. So without a relationship, it's going to be difficult for them to receive
mm,
any recommendation or
mm.
guidance you provide them.
And I suppose this can be both formal and informal, right?
Oh, yes, definitely. Formal and informal. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Any other thoughts or questions or feedback?
I would presume that the same will go for prayer. Is that right?
Same will go for prayer. So he's
Where
going,
the, where they also have prayer needs or something.
yes, prayer needs. And so,
Instead of
because over the course of time, again, through the relationship, you will get to know them. Part of the relationship building could also even involve visiting them at home or inviting
mm,
them to visit you, or maybe
mm,
even having dinner or something like that at their home. You
mm,
get to know the person's family. I mean,
mm.
look at the extent to which Jesus related with his 12, with the 12.
Yeah.
They were very much involved in their lives.
Mm,
We see it even in his relationship with Mary and Martha. You know,
mm,
stopping by there every now and then on long journeys, getting his feet washed, getting a meal prepared, just spending time with the family. And
mm,
through this, you will truly get to know the person. And so, to the extent that you would also come to know whatever may be going on in the person's life or family and pray for the disciple.
mm.
I don't know. I remember, growing up in SU back in the early 70s. Um, I had all these experiences. I don't know how it is now
Yeah.
in Ghana or even in your specific ministries, in case anybody wants to share.
Mm.
Yeah. Does anybody have maybe an example to share, either in ministry or in your own personal life?
Yeah, I recall my times with the late Kweku Watful,
Mm,
who was one time the General Secretary of the Scripture Union, and
yeah.
also a lecturer at the business school.
Mm,
And the specific area in which he helped me was how to study my Bible, to do personal Bible study.
mm,
And when I became a student at the Trinity Theological Seminary, almost everyone, because I needed good food to eat. At the seminary, we were on fast. So, so I spent most of my weekend. Ebenezer, I mean, Ebenezer is laughing. So I will spend the weekends at the University his residence at the University of Ghana together with the five. Unfortunately, just about the time we have fully entered ministry and we're going to partner ourselves together in his leadership training, the Lord suddenly called him home.
mm,
But I remembered the things that he taught me in terms of you said something about fun, okay? Fun.
yeah.
He really made Bible study a fun.
Mm,
Helped us to turn some of the scriptures. In everything, give thanks, for this is the will of God. In everything, give thanks, for this is the will of God. He has a way of making Bible memory very, very,
mhm.
easy. In his memory, I wrote a book after his death. It is called "It Is Written."
Mm.
A guide to personal Bible study.
Mm.
Wow.
So that's how much of a debt I owe to the late Kwaku Hotful, who
Mm.
was very, very much, involved in my lives. And I use his car
Mm.
also for my wedding
Oh.
after Trinity. Yeah.
Wow.
And up to now, even in my work as a bishop now, this was like a whole family thing. So the wife still maintains that relationship with me.
Mm.
That's good.
And I think it's a good idea that we are all learning
Mm-hmm.
this.
Yeah.
We'll try to do our best for others too.
Okay, good. Well, shall we go back to mute some kids in the background with some noise? Yeah, thank you. Good, good, good. Anybody else wants to share his or her example from your own experience? Okay, well, let's move on then. So we talked about evaluation. We're going to now take a look at a case study. This was developed by Nate, our international director, during one of his trips, either to Uganda or so. So we're going to use this case study of Mr. Kasongo to sort of map out what this NGP thing looks like. Can I have someone to read the first paragraph for us? Is Frank there? Frank, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, sir.
Okay, so can you read the first paragraph for us?
Okay, I'll do it, sir.
Thank you.
And I read, Mr. Kasongo is a 40-year-old man. He works as a teacher in a government school. He is married and has 5 children, ages 10, 8, 6, 4, and 2. Mr. Kasongo made a commitment to Christ when he was in secondary school, but was not very serious about his relationship with God until 2 years ago. Since then, he has been actively involved in the men's fellowship, where he is participating in a Bible study on the Gospel of John. Mr. Kasongo has shown growth in his Christian life, learning to spend time in personal prayer, devotional times, learning obedience to Christ, and trusting God to meet all his needs. He's serving on the church building committee. Mr. Kasongo's growth and love for the things of God is very impressive. Thank you, sir.
All right. So can you read this next paragraph for us, please?
Recently, the church held a seminar on sharing your faith with others, which Kasongo faithfully attended. Afterward, the Lord gave him a concern for his fellow teachers who have no personal relationship with Christ. He has expressed his concern for his fellow teachers to his Christian friends in the church. However, he has also mentioned his own fear of sharing the gospel with fellow teachers who are not believers. He's afraid they may take it as one of his jokes, for he's a man with a big sense of humor. He's popularly known at his school for his jokes rather than his faith.
Okay. Good. The next, let me pull out the next one here. My PowerPoint is not being responsive today. Just 1 second. Okay. All right. Okay, let's continue. Okay, Reverend Sabute, can you take us through the rest, please?
Okay. Asongo and his wife had a good marriage relationship. However, at times, the many demands of having young children hindered them from maintaining good communication. Mr. Kasongo works long hours as he offers extra lessons to the pupils in examination classes to supplement his government salary. He often makes resolutions to do things for his family, but fails to
Fulfill.
to fulfill them due to the many things he commits himself to. Most of the time, Mrs. Kasongo is with the children all by herself. There have been arguments with his wife about how he should wisely divide his time because he leaves home early in the morning and comes back late. At times, it takes a day or two before the children see their father. Kasongo defers his actions to his wife, I think.
Yeah.
Is it wife?
Yes.
Okay, by saying that taking care of the children is a woman's job. He says his role is only to make sure they have food at home for the family. Mr. Kasongo is a naturally relational person and can relate with all kinds of people in the church or in the community. He has a servant heart and is known and called upon by many friends for assistance with a number of things, even things he has little knowledge about. He finds it difficult to say no to friends and people when asked for help or tuitions. He's always a busy person?
Busy man.
Busy man, okay.
Okay. I'm going to just reset my PowerPoint, but I want you to think about the story. Just keep it in mind. We will get back to it shortly. Just want to reset my PowerPoint here. Give me a second. Okay. 1 second. Let me share my screen. Okay. Sure, you can all see from here. Can you see from here? Hello, everyone. Hello?
Yes, please.
Okay, good. All right, so here we have this story of Mr. Kasongo. And so based on what we have covered so far, I want us to look at what Mr. Kasongo's needs are. Please feel free to share with us what you think his needs are at this point, based on the story. He needs to prioritize his needs, right? And what do they look like? First, even if we look at the story here, I don't know if you still remember the details of the story. Being a teacher with 5 kids, also being involved in a church, and the things that are going on in his life. So just based on that, what do you think are his needs?
Well, I'll go for time management.
Okay. Okay. Time management is one. What else? What else is, or would you consider as his needs?
Okay, I also say that he should prioritize his activities. It seems he do things together.
Okay.
That
Prioritizing.
created, is his activities.
Okay. Okay. What else? Let me give you a few pointers here. First thing is that he needs to overcome fear. He needs to work on overcome fear. The fear of men, the fear of people.
Mm.
He also needs to learn to say no. Um, if he's been a yes man to everybody, then that's a problem. He also needs to spend time with his family, right? He also needs to maintain integrity between his work at the church and his commitments at the school.
How is that?
Well, he's busy at the school. He's also busy, with his commitment to the church. So if he's caught up in not honoring his commitments or becoming too overstretched to the extent that it's bleeding deep into his relationships, right? There has to be some level of integrity. The integrity would tie into being able to say no if he's had too much on his plate. He also
Mm.
needs to spend time and be able to have a meaningful communication with his wife. He also needs to have a biblical view of family and marriage. One area we noted here is that he says Kasongo defends his actions to his wife by saying that taking care of the children is a woman's job. And he says his role is only to make sure that they have food at home for the family.
That's a typical African view of the marriage, so that's okay.
And what is the biblical view then?
It's a cultural issue, isn't it?
Yeah. So are we going to go? Well, sometimes it happens, here in the West. So are we going to go by our cultural beliefs or where the culture clashes with the Bible?
No, then
Some
we go for Christ. We go for Christ and culture.
something needs to give way, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted us to subject this thing to the caps.
Okay.
Because I was looking at the notes back again, the needs.
Mm-hmm.
So I think one of them you just mentioned, you said knowledge about the biblical view of family and marriage.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be knowledge, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So biblical view of what marriage is and what a family is supposed to run. you could tell that somehow it looks like his priorities are all mixed up.
Mm.
So based on these, what the outline I've just given you, I think Mr. Kasongo needs to prioritize and choose one.
Mm.
So if if he's to prioritize and choose one, what would be your recommendation?
Mm. It's a tough one.
Someone, mhm.
I'm sure you'll be able to send these notes to us later on, right?
um,
Because I did this particular decision to solve a situation on hand now.
okay, all right, I can send that.
Involving one of my church leaders. I mean, this particular story, I need it.
Okay, okay,
If you will oblige me, sir.
okay, that's fine.
No, just the case. That's the case study. Just the
Sure,
case study.
sure, sure. That's not a problem. I'll
Just
send,
the case study.
I'll send that to you. And
I'll be really grateful. Yeah.
let me ask this question here. How many of you do you think can resonate with Mr. Kasongo's situation?
I've been there.
What about the rest?
I've been there, and I had to take a definite decision that God first, family second, ministry third.
Okay, that's the structure, right? God first, family second,
Family, and then
ministry.
before ministry.
Okay,
But I have been there.
okay. But then what happens? What about the rest? Any thoughts? Moses, Frank, and the others.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. I think sometimes you do it unconsciously.
Mhm.
If you look at, sometimes you put a lot of church activities on you. You want to do this, you want to do that, to the extent of neglecting your family.
Mm.
I remember just last week, something happened. I was taking my wife and children to town to do one or two things. And I needed to go to office also to work. So when they called me, I said, oh, I'm on my way with my children. Then you know what my daughter told me?
Hmm.
Tell them that you are going out with their children.
Wow.
So today, you can't make it today. Let them know that today you are with your family. So it's not possible. And I listened to your advice. I listened to the advice too. And I finally I told them that I may not be able to. I tell you, sometimes unconsciously some of this thing happens to us as ministers. But like Bishop said, as you grow and become mature, you are able to decipher and take concrete decisions as to what to do and what not to do.
Mm.
That so that you will be able to balance the situation very well.
Mm.
You will not neglect your family and then also neglect the work of God. It's quite challenging, but especially when you have people, I mean, leaders who are like you are a junior pastor,
Mm.
where people more or less take decisions for you. And sometimes some of the decisions are beyond your control.
Mm.
And it becomes very difficult to say no or yes. It's quite challenging,
Mm.
but the Lord will help us.
Mm. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for sharing. And thanks for being vulnerable with us. What about the rest? Frank, you have something to share with us? So,
Yeah, Baba, I think that the point the last speaker just made,
yeah, it's okay.
it often happens to us in our fraternity when you are a probationer. Like Papa said, that's when in your ministry you don't have the, let me say, the courage to say yes or no. So you become more of a yes man, trying to borrow your own term. You become a yes man to both the congregation you are serving and your supervisory superior or your boss. So the difficulty, so I could just put myself in the picture you painted years back, about 2 years ago, when I was a probationer, where there's a demand from church, and then how to balance the urgent need of family as well. And it becomes very, very difficult at that stage to even prioritize there as it might be, because your priorities, if it stands at variance with what your supervisor has, then you're going to find yourself in deep waters. And also, like you said, the fear of not having good recommendation will make you flout things that you know are not right and healthy for you, because you need good recommendation to be ordained fully. So I can relate with the scenario you are painting. I can relate with
Like being caught between the rock and the hard place.
That's right, because the point is that you are forced to say yes, to be a yes man temporarily, so you can get ordained. But we're thinking that when you are out of it, you can. But you realize that even after ordination, if you are not, because it becomes habitual, even though you are now full-fledged or ordained now, you have learned that habit. And so it becomes more permanent with you, even though now you don't have somebody who might like spank you with a rod or something. But because it has become part of you, it becomes more of, and I think it's not too good. It's not too good for ministry. It's not, because your family will suffer.
Thank you. Any others? Anybody else wants to share his or her personal experience with a group? Okay, so let's move on then. So the Kasongo needs to prioritize and choose one. So what would be your recommendation? Which one of these needs do you think will be helpful for Mr. Kasongo to focus on? If we look at it, the 3-tier, we've got God, ministry, no, God, family, and ministry. So based on what we looked at, his need to overcome fear, to learn to say no. He needs to spend time with his family, integrity with church, and also his school, his job. Time and communication with his wife is needed. He also needs to have a biblical view of family and marriage, and also he needs to prioritize his time. One that will be simple and approachable. What do you think he needs to focus on? Let me make a recommendation here based on what we've seen in the story. I think what would be a bit simpler for us to process would be learning to prioritize his time. Okay, Mr. Kasongo needs to learn to prioritize his time. So on that basis, what do you think would be the specific metrics that needs to be seen with respect to changes in his life So we know he's actually making a good use of his time. Remember, the goals have to be specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound. So how would we know that he's actually prioritizing his time?
Yeah, again, coming back to what we went through,
Mhm.
we decided that I'll visit my wife on Mondays.
Mm. Okay.
So what I'm trying to say is that it may be to set a specific time for the family.
Okay. So with that,
And that must be stated. In my case, I decided that Mondays is a no-go this thing.
no ministry day, right?
I'm ministering to my wife.
Yeah. So when we look at the goals, let's think of it in terms of the goals here. They must be specific. And your example is great. Measurable, it must be achievable, realistic, and also time bound. So now we want to take that and move on to the specific projects. Now, the key thing here is time management. So on the basis of the RCAPs, using the RCAPs as again, how can we design a project based on meeting that specific need or goal? First, let's look at a relationship. Reverend Sabute, you just given an example um, about spending time with your wife, deciding that Monday is a day for your wife. The question there is under relationships, what relational contact will I have with a disciple during the NGP? You need to decide on a regular time. In terms of, in the case of Mr. Kasongo, Mr. Kasongo would, he can make those specific goals, but you as a disciple, helping the disciple, mean that you need to make a regular, set a specific time where you can meet together with a disciple, right? Do you guys have any thoughts in that area? Any thoughts on the relational contact? So, in terms of the relational contact that you have with a disciple, you can then use that to also review the specifics that the person is set up for between him and his family. You talked about using, for instance, your relationship with your wife as an example. Also, you have kids. So if Mr. Kasungo has kids, then he also needs to have time set aside for his kids, right? What about content? What content will you give in terms of books, teaching, scripture, or seminars? Here in the area of content, you can think about what maybe scripture passages or maybe books on time management or how to set priorities could be one. A book comes to mind. I've forgotten the author of the book. It was written some years back. It's titled The Tyranny of the Urgent. I don't know if any of you have come across that book. The Tyranny of the Urgent.
What?
The Tyranny of the Urgent.
Well, I just taught it last week to my bishop.
Oh, who wrote it? Do you remember the author?
Cromwell, or Tumel or something like that.
Okay, I don't remember. I had it.
Tumel.
Oh, okay. Okay. So we've got to make, but in deciding on the content to teach, you also need to make a list of commitments that the person has. Okay, so you can't just do it randomly like that. Based on the list of the person's commitments, for instance, Mr. Kasongo, based on the story, what commitments do you remember he had? How many commitments could you identify from his story?
I can see 4.
Okay.
The school, family, church, and community.
Uh-huh. So he's being pulled in many different directions.
Yeah.
Okay. So then based on that, you can then determine, okay, where okay. Any other thoughts from others? Thoughts or comments from the rest? Okay, let's move on to accountability. The question is, how will I challenge the disciple to do this, to do it the NGP? Okay, so here, accountability is where you're going to set some benchmarks where you can also inquire about the disciples' progress. And then in the area of prayer, how often do you have to be praying for your disciple or even meeting with the disciple to pray? And what would you be praying for a disciple? And I remember growing up as a young Christian, my discipler would often visit the botanical gardens at UST in Kumasi with me, and we would stay there. We would wait on the Lord. We would pray together, and then get some encouragement from Him and support. Yeah, and then the final one is situations. What specific situations will I put my disciple in to help them grow in the area? So these are all questions you could look into with respect to the time management, using the case of Mr. Kasongo. Any thoughts or comments? You see, looking at his situation, it might be tempting to say, okay, maybe the focus needs to be on his relationship with his family or his wife. But if you're not careful, there's going to be an imbalance between that and also the ministry. So we've got to be able to discern, where you think the priority needs to be here. Because in his case, if you look at the entirety of the story, his biggest issue is time management. And if he's able to manage his time well, all those areas that he has commitment to wouldn't suffer. It may even mean that it could mean that he may have to maybe reduce his level of commitment, especially to maybe the community or some other areas, if possible. The next thing is to evaluate. This is the final piece, to evaluate, to determine how Mr. Kasongo did with his goals. Where did he struggle? Where did he do well in terms of his strengths, and where did he struggle? And you also even ask yourself as a discipler, what would you do differently based on the evaluation? What needs to change? And finally, you also need to decide whether you should continue, Mr. Kasongo should continue working through the NGP, or maybe you think he's been able to achieve his goal, therefore he needs to move on to a new NGP. So this is just an example, and if you go on the web page, you will come across an NGP worksheet where we've put the entire story. We've sort of delineated that and put it together for you here. I could send this as an example for you to look at in light of Mr. Kasongo's, but on the website, from the manual, there is another example, not specifically to Mr. Kasongo, but someone else, where you could see a similar example with a worksheet. And also there's a blank worksheet that you could use to develop your own NGP. So we are going to end here today, but as your homework exercise, I want to challenge you. Take Mr. Kasongo's as an example, maybe to find something that relates to your situation, and maybe create a worksheet like this that you can share with the group when we meet next time. I will set the date. I've got a few things ahead of me that I need to clear up. So we will plan to meet early next year in January. I think probably either the first, maybe the first or second week. I will confirm the date with you guys. But please go through that. Make sure you've gone through the material on life coaching, and also do your exercise with the NGP worksheet, and be prepared to share yours with the group. Okay, any questions or thoughts?
Well, am I on?
Yes, you're on.
Okay. Well, the book I was just trying to talk about, because I had to teach my my fellow bishops on time management last church retreat, and it's Charles Hummel.
Charles,
The
who?
tyranny.
Yes, the tyranny of the age.
Yeah.
Oh,
Charles Hummel. Charles in like Charles.
Oh, okay. I think
Hummel. Humme.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Tyranny of the age. Yeah. To understand what would be the difference between life coaching and mentoring.
Well, a mentor and a life coach, I wouldn't see it as anything different, because a life coach mentor, but they use the term life coach, because it's become a bit too popular these days. They look at it in terms of someone who has tons and tons of experience, but that's not the case when it comes to spiritual life coaching, because we are all under shepherds of the greater shepherd, that is Christ himself. So with in terms of mentoring, I wouldn't see much of a difference. Yeah. Because a mentor comes alongside a person, right? The life coach also does this. We also see that as a role of the Holy Spirit, coming alongside us to help and to guide us. Yeah. Any other questions or thoughts? Otherwise, we will call it an evening in Ghana, a day. What time is it now?
Almost 8:25.
8:25. Oh, it's 1:21 p.m. here. And we are bracing ourselves for heavy snow tonight.
Oh.
All right. Well,
what state is that?
I'm in Canada, in Alberta.
Is this?
Yeah, we're way north. So it gets cold here. we have snow. We have quite a bit on the ground, but tonight we're going to have a storm. Okay, well, it's nice seeing you again, and God willing, we will connect again in the new year. Enjoy a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. God bless you all. Bye now.
Amen.
Bye-bye.
Bye.